Hey, congratulations on this horror comedy, Too Late.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been pretty exciting.
So tell us, why did you want to direct this movie in the first place for yourself?
Well, I've been an editor for about 20 years, and so I've spent a lot of time sort of making other people's dreams work and come together, and I have been wanting to direct since I went to film school, and my husband and I, we thought, oh well, what is a story we could tell for not a lot of money with people that we know we can pull together, and that would be fun to do. And so, my husband was in the comedy world for a while, and it kind of came about naturally. We thought, oh, what would be a fun monster movie that was set in a comedy world? So that was kind of the beginning of it.
So, so when your husband pitched this to you, and you just simply like love the story.
It kind of came out a little bit more naturally than that. We were talking first about like what if there was a character that had to sort of feed a monster, and from that it evolved into what if the monster was in the comedy world, because I mean there are a lot of metaphorical monsters in comedy, so it works pretty well. And it was also a world where like a monster could kind of go unnoticed. And so we broke the story together, and we wanted to have a female protagonist, and we wanted to really show like the alternative comedy world. And so that's really how it came about. And a lot of the comedians in there were friends of my husband's, and yeah, they all came on board, and it was just very exciting to do
I,
that part.
I was going to ask, are those actual stand-up comedians that you sprinkle throughout the entire movie?
They are, yeah, because I'm sure you've seen other movies where they have stand-up comedy and it's written by a screenwriter, and the jokes never really feel like actual stand-up bits, because these comedians, they've been perfecting this comedy for years and years and years, and you can see it. And it's so we and also there's so many talented comedians out there. We thought, oh, why not actually just use comedians?
So for the script's sake, these punchlines, these jokes that these comedians actually told, is it their jokes or is it your husband's jokes?
It's their jokes. So they were wonderful enough to burn a couple of their jokes for the movie.
Oh, excellent. So
Yeah.
how did you just film that? You just basically just put the camera on them and just say go.
Yeah, it was pretty much like a documentary. It was they each got about 5 minutes per set, and so we took a day. I think it was about a day for the stand up in Bob's show, and then I think we did another day for the coffee shop comedians, and we just let them go. And so I didn't actually know the jokes that they were going to tell, which is a little bit risky because you never know how crass they can get. But we were pretty lucky that a lot of them were just pretty funny. So it was a little bit of a Sophie's choice choosing the jokes I ended up putting in the movie, but I think they came out really well.
Well, I guess that's where your 20 years of editing skills come in, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So when I was shooting it, actually, I kind of was cutting it in my head, which I know is probably not the best thing to do, because then you might miss out on actually discovering it in the edit room. But because I have such an editor's mind, I was like, okay, I think I've got it. I mean, we shot this movie in 15 days, and so it was like we got it like two takes per shot, and then doing the live comedy, I just remember the producers going, "Oh, looking at their watches, like I don't know if we have time for all of these jokes, like speed it up." But I was like, "No, we have to let the comedians have their time, because I know in the edit room that I'm gonna really want that, and I'm gonna want to have as much content to edit with."
So when you, as a director yourself, did you had the mindset of trying to make it this like a comedy or a horror?
Yeah, it was a tough line to walk because I wanted to have elements of horror, but I didn't want to go full on horror. I wanted it to keep it light and fun and have that comedy. But then the comedy it's very alternative comedy, and so it's kind of a dark, edgier comedy. But I wanted to walk that line. I didn't want to go too far into the gruesome gore. I wanted it to keep more like the films I grew up watching, like Gremlins and Werewolf in London, American Werewolf in London, and you know those sort of. It's a fun comedy, yeah, but it's not full on slapstick comedy.
Well, one of the things I do have to admire is that you went practical for your film. Could you talk about the prosthetics that you use for the character Bob Devore?
Oh, absolutely. That was Mo Meinhardt who created all the prosthetics, and I wanted to keep it practical because we could have gone full on a CGI or VFX, but because of cost and because of wanting that feel, like that Gremlins feel, we thought that would be the most fun. And Bob, yeah, Bob was a lot of fun because Bob I think he had 3 looks throughout the film. He has Bob before he eats somebody, Bob after he eats someone, and then, without giving too much away, after Bob kind of goes through the process, we have that third Bob, which was so much fun, and Mo did such a good job just making him feel realistic, because that was another thing, is if I was going to set it in this world that was real, I wanted the monster to feel real, like he could just blend in,
Hmm.
and that he could sort of transform and then kind of go back and forth, and it was adding to that comedy as well. So yeah, and I think Ron Lynch just had so much fun in the prosthetic outfit. I mean, giving an actor the chance to like actually look the part and become that monster, I think is really cool. Whereas, if you add a lot in post, I think you miss out on that, as well as the actors that were acting with him.
Well, that's terrific because it seems like you put Ron through quite a bit. I mean, how long does that take to put on that prosthetics? Like what, 3 4 hours or much
I
longer?
think it's about, yeah, like gosh, I don't even know how much in the end, because I was always shooting as they were doing all the prosthetics, but I think it was about 3 to 4 hours, maybe more. When Ron was in the later part of the movie, that took a little bit longer, but that suit was the same suit. So once we went to Rob version 3, I guess, we couldn't go back to Ron version 2. So that was kind of like, all right, we hope to have all of the shots that we need, because once we start messing with the suit, we can't go back.
This being your first feature film, don't you think this was kind of ambitious to to use like prosthetics and for like a monster movie as your
Oh
first
yeah,
film?
probably. Yeah. We didn't have kids. So but we did have a dog as well. So it was a dog, and they always tell you never shoot with children and animals. But yeah, I think, in a way, having the prosthetics, it meant I had to really shoot around it, because a lot of the magic in sort of prosthetics is that you don't see everything, and then your brain kind of creates the rest. So that was definitely, I guess, a challenge as a first time director, because I was just like hoping that we get the shot and it doesn't look so cheesy. But I think it turned out really well. And uh some of the pieces, even though I know how everything worked, I still kind of jump when I watch the movie.
Well, let's talk about your two primary actors, Alyssa and Ron. Obviously, Ron's been a good sport throughout. Tell why these two were perfect, and how did you discover them for your film?
Yeah, well, we actually wrote the role for Ron. Ron was a friend of my husband's, and I got to know him through he has a late night show, a variety show as well. And so we kind of based the character loosely around him. He's not a monster, oh, obviously, in real life. He's actually very kind. He doesn't have that dark side either. But we thought this was a role that he could totally dig his teeth into. So once we brought Ron on, and he loved it and he wanted to do it, and then we did auditions, and Alyssa came in actually auditioning for a different role. And when she came in, we were like, oh my gosh, this is our Violet, because she kind of exuded that emotional feeling of Violet at the end of the movie. We were like, okay, so if Alyssa is like a Violet at the end of the movie, as long as she can become the Violet in the beginning of the movie, the much more quiet and repressed and sort of put upon Violet, then we knew she could do it. And Alyssa Lamperis is also a comedian, and so she understands the life of being a comedian. And yeah, I'm just so excited. I'm so thrilled to have her, because she really embodied the character, and this was her first feature film as well. And so we were like, oh my gosh, I hope she can carry the film. And that's one of the responses we've been getting most, is like, Alyssa really carries this film, and she's so terrific. And you see a side of her that you don't see on her social media life or her even comedian life. So we were really lucky.
I think all the pieces actually fit very very well for this film. How did you manage to score Fred? Because it seems like Fred loves doing these indie projects. How did you get on board?
Well, Fred is an old time friend of Ron, and so we asked Ron. We were like, Ron, is there anybody who you love, who you think would be interested in this film? And so he thought, oh, I bet Fred would want to do it. And he sent him the script, and Fred Armisen loved it, and he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come in. And we didn't have him for that long, but he was completely game. And working with, I mean, he is a veteran of film and TV, and so working with someone who knows exactly how he comes across on film, and he's just immediately embodies the character. It was so easy, and it was so much fun watching the other actors and watching Alyssa act with him as well, because actors bring out different pieces in other actors. You've always seen that with chemistry and with so that's how he came on, and we were just so lucky. And same with Mary Lynn Rice-Cub. Fred was also, or Ron Lynch was also a good friend of hers, and so he really brought a lot of these great comedians into the story.
It's always who you know. That's the absolute thing. And one more thing, your locations, because you obviously had a cafe and so on, but where did you get the location for your comedy club? Is that like an abandoned place in LA? What was that?
Almost, yeah. It's the Hungarian Cultural Center in downtown LA, and finding that location actually made it possible for us to shoot the movie in 15 days. It had about 15 separate locations within that location. So we got the stand-up comedy club, we got the restaurant, we got Bob's apartment, we had outside the bar, and gosh, I think I'm probably missing a couple of the spots, but we really made use of that location. Yeah, it's pretty much like they just shoot lots of films there, and it's like just this big kind of warehouse space.
That is terrific. I do love film magic here. But one more thing about your movie, because when people actually have a chance to watch, and they're gonna be scratching their head trying to figure out what is Bob. What is Bob? I mean, some people be like werewolf, vampire, or some demonic creature. I mean, when you and your husband actually came up with it, what was picturing in your heads that what Bob is?
Well, actually, once we sort of started thinking about Bob's actual physicality, we started looking. I looked up a lot of folk characters and from different countries and from different areas, and there's this character in Australian lore that actually eats people whole and then regurgitates them. And if he's eaten you whole 3 times, then you become him. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a really fascinating kind of character. And so we thought, oh, well, that's cool. Like, I wonder, yeah, I wonder what that would look like. And just with that he has to eat them whole, then there's not a lot of blood, because it's more like an owl eating an animal whole and then regurgitates, like, which is that weird hairball at the beginning. you
Yeah.
know that's kind of the mechanics of it. But he's definitely lived for a really long time, so that's that vampire sort of idea. And really, he's kind of, I was reading a lot of Stephen King before we wrote the script, and the Dark Tower series. He has these characters that kind of absorb other people's emotions, and we thought, oh, that's also interesting, like an emotional vampire. And so Bob as a comedian, he which is a very subtle element in the film. I don't know if you picked up on it, but he actually absorbs the comedy of the people that he eats. And
Yeah, I
so
actually picked up on it. Yeah.
yeah, so that comes out later. And we would have liked to do more with that, but of course it was like time crunch. So uh yeah, so he's like a vampire type of monster. He's his own thing. Bob is Bob.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I always figured that you probably just created him, out of the figment of your imagination or something, something new, something different. Leave the
Yes.
audience suggesting.
And I really liked the idea of having a monster that was kind of likable. Like, you sort of feel for him. He's just doing what he does. Like, he happens to be an apex predator, I guess. And so, really, it's Violet. Violet's the one that's throwing her people out there to feed Bob. And so I really like the idea of showing kind of his vulnerable side as a monster, because you don't often get to see the vulnerable monster, but he's still scary and he still has that threatening element. But yeah, I just like the idea of giving it a little more dimension.
I think that is great. And for yourself, since this was your first feature film, I don't know if you could ever go back. You want to do this again?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I love editing, and I don't know if I'll keep on editing my films, but I'm definitely not going back. I definitely want to keep making features. It's just so much fun. I already have a few screenplays that I've worked on with my husband that we're already pitching around, and yeah, we just want to keep making more. And I love also the genre that's kind of more of the adventure, sort of horror comedy, but more adventure. And so it just, I have a lot of fun um, kind of going in that direction. And yeah, and I think we need it right now. I think we need a little bit of laughter.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you for sharing this conversation with us about your film Too Late. And first time director, first time actor. I think everything was perfect through this movie, because I found it very hilarious myself.
Oh, terrific. Well, thank you so much, Gig.
Hey, not a problem. Next time, all right?
Definitely.